Welcome to Pretty Lies and Alibis. Let's seek the truth and travel the long road to justice together. What you know, Alibiers? Happy Tuesday. Hope you're having a good day. It's been a good day for me, but look, I don't know who in Canada forgot to shut the front door, but it's been cold here. I don't do cold. I miss summer. I want it back. I'm in my long sleeve shirt. By the way, this shirt is so old. So I saw Rent on Broadway. I'm a Rent head. And I saw it with the original cast on Broadway. So that's how old this shirt is. On the back, it says no day but today. So yeah, I got my leggings on and my long sleeve shirt. Man, I hate winter. All right, music fact of the day before we get started. In 2021, just last year, Beyonce broke the record for female with the most Grammys for a total of 28 won. Who held that record before her? I was surprised to learn this, but then again, I wasn't surprised. Alison Krauss. She had won 17 Grammys by the time she was 40 and ultimately reached 27 before Beyonce took over last year. I love Alison Krauss. I really, really just have always loved her voice. She's so talented. So, all right, let's jump into day 25 of the George Wagner trial. Poor Julia was back on the stand right under cross. And it was really quick, thank goodness. Parker asked if she recalls all the calls that were played yesterday, and she said she would like to see the transcripts. And he asked if she prepared this, and she said yes for the testimony, but she doesn't know if she made the original. And he asked if there were other topics on the calls other than what we heard. And she said she would have to see the transcripts. I love it. She was going from being really quiet and reserved on the stand to sort of firing back. And I talked about this yesterday and she kept it today. I love it. He asked to have the entire calls played. The state objects, the judge sustains. And thank goodness, we don't hear the calls again. It was that one, I believe, that very first one. So on redirect, she asked if they took Tabitha to the Montana border with them, and she said no, they did not. So confirmation, the Wagners are super paranoid. So the next witness was Lieutenant Brian White. He's been up many times. I think Julia right now holds the record for number of times on the stand. But on July 23rd, 2018, Jake, George, and Billy were required to come to the Pike County Sheriff's Office to give foot measurements, fingerprints, and palm prints. So the team decided to have an outside expert review some of the evidence found at the scenes, specifically those shoe impressions. And from what I've heard, that seems to be kind of the big evidence other than Jake's testimony that they have on George. So we'll see. The expert they hired was out of Daytona Beach, Florida, top of his field. And so Lieutenant White's singing his praises, the defense objects. And so we move on. So the expert gave Lieutenant White a list of things he needed for them to collect from Jake, George, and Billy in order for him to do a correct analysis. So at the crime scenes, they collected the footwear impressions from scenes 1 and 3. I don't know how I missed it, but I never heard about scene 1. I knew about Dana's house, but not scene 1. So the expert requested White take a tracing of their feet with a pen and also use a measuring device, just a standard one that you use at a shoe store, to measure their feet without shoes on. And he also wanted a mold or foam impression of the feet of all three. So they present the foam impressions of the right and left foot of all three, pin tracings for all three, and the measurements. This was Jake's right foot. They didn't show anything else. I guess that's going to come in when the shoe expert comes to testify. But there's Jake's foot. So White actually drove this stuff down to Florida himself to hand deliver these items because they were pieces of evidence, and he wanted to make sure that chain of custody stayed very tight. And that's why he drove. It took the expert 2 days to do everything he needed to do with what he was brought. And then Lieutenant White drove everything back to BCI when the expert was done. That's dedicated to your job. they could have flown him. He could have brought that stuff carry on. He also got fingerprints and palm prints for the three. And the investigation team had a photograph that Jake had holding a gun, and there was enough of the ridge detail on the palm that they could match the palm print in the photo to Jake's palm print. Now, I don't know really why this is important, because as far as we know, they never found any DNA. Maybe there was a partial palm print I'd heard about one time, but I think we would have heard about that by now. But they're introducing some things, I think, that they're ruling out as being relevant. And I think it kind of wastes some time, like that day we went through the search warrant at Flying W Farms, where nothing of substance was found. I just don't get it. So both sides stipulate that the photo with Jake holding that Walter Colt 1911 22 gun was the same as the palm print taken from Jake. So on cross-exam, the defense asked if he took photos that day of George. So he says yes. And if you're on YouTube, you can see this picture of George with his pants hiked up and his bare feet. I'll put the link in the description for all the photos I'm showing on here, by the way. As usual, it's a photo of George with no socks or no shoes. And so that was it for him. And so for me, I think as a juror, and so I think that Lieutenant White's testimony today, for example, would have been much better to go right before the shoe expert, so that kind of stays fluid. And so I've said this in the past, there's a lot of things that they're leaving very open-ended. And I think that could the jury's going to lose kind of that sharp detail of these things after days and days of days. And some days are very mundane. And you have days like yesterday and today that are obviously hard on the jury, because they're hearing all of these recordings that it's taken me hours and hours and hours to try to decipher, and they get to hear them once, maybe twice, with no transcript. So it's, I think this jury, man, I think they're probably already really tired. So the next witness we have is Special Agent Jennifer Comisford, and she's been on the stand before. In July 18th of 2018, she got handwriting samples from Angela. The process took 2 hours. So they did what I think she called a London letter: name, date, address. They handwrite a typed paragraph in her own handwriting, word for word. She first did that with her dominant hand, which Angela said was her right. And then she had to write out a check with Hannah Roden's name on it. She did the same thing with her left hand, man. I'd have failed. There ain't no way. I can't even write one letter with my left hand. She took a break, and then she had to sign her name in cursive 40 times. She had to sign her mother Rita's name in cursive 40 times, and then Hanna May's name in cursive 40 times. The final forms were guardianship forms, and Angela was required to complete different sections. She had to print Jake's name, sign Rita's name and dates, and Hanna May's name. That was submitted to the BCI lab for comparison. So the handwriting expert is going to come in at a later date. Again, I would have put her on right before the handwriting expert just to keep it fluid. On cross, when collecting, did you collect any from George? She said she did not. So Julia's back on the stand. They asked her about the Boondock Saints ding-dong scene found on Jacob's browsing history. Jacob, my nephew. I was literally just thinking about my nephew Jacob, and it's Jake. So that was April 21st, 2016. We know that's the night the murder started. Chris Sr. and Gary were murdered before midnight, about 10:55 p.m. So yesterday, she didn't clarify UTC time and do the deduction. So it was said yesterday that they looked at that scene after 11 p.m., which would have been after Chris and Gary were murdered. But actually, it was Googled at 7:06 p.m. So the laptop that they got at the Montana border, there were video recordings from the device made by Jake which were kind of hidden in his pocket. And this was during the custody battle with Hanna May about Sophie. You could hear steps, doors opening. You could hear a truck engine. You could hear everything. Most of the recordings were at pickup and drop off with the Roden family. And so the first recording was December 11th, 2015, which I might add is 2 days after the screenshots of Hanna May saying they'll have to kill me before I sign over custody. So Hanna May tells Jake she plans to move in with Corey Holdren once she has the new baby in a couple of months. Jake, I can't hear a thing with him. He's very low and muffled, but Hanna May says something to the effect of, I'm moving in with him. I don't want to live the rest of my life with my parents, Jake. Yeah, my mom, me, and Christopher. And then she says again, I'm moving in. Sophia is yelling, Daddy, Daddy, hurry the whole time. And Hanna May says, better hurry. Her voice is super cute, y'all. And it's so sad to hear her voice, because I think we get so used to seeing pictures and we don't know what she sounds like. And then when you hear her voice for the first time, and we hear Dana's and we hear little Chris on some of these recordings, it drives home that these, I mean, I know we know they're real people, but when you hear their voices, it makes it a lot more real, I think, to just drive home the fact that these poor people. So the next recording was December 19th, 2015 at 1:11 p.m. This is Jake and Hanna May talking about Tabitha. Jake says something to the effect of, now that she's older and understands more. And then he says, I texted her and you didn't text me back about that. Do you mind if I call her tonight? Hanna May says, Monday I have class. Jake said, yeah, I know you got class. Oh, I haven't told George you're taking together. So I don't know if Hanna May and Tabitha were taking classes together. It was not clear to me. Hanna May says something about her boyfriend's cousin and working on a paper. Then Jake says, talking about Tabitha, I wouldn't sit next to her. I think it's little Chris who says, next to who? And Jake says, Tabitha, she has bed bugs. And little Chris says, what? And Jake said, those critters can jump. Hanna May says she's in college now. And Jake says, like Shawnee, I believe. Jake says, you just said she's going to college. You don't know what college it is. And Hanna May says, no, I don't. And Jake says, you're not going to tell me. So this jumps to Christmas Eve, 12/24/2015. Jake's picking up Sophie after showing up to Corey's house. Jake must have just shown up there. Hanna May must have, I don't know if she was late or what, but he knocks on the door and you hear Hanna May say, what? So Sophie's crying as the doors open, and he says, hey, Sophie, what's wrong? Hanna May, she says something about Jake messing with Corey or something. And she said, you could have just waited till I got out to bring her. And Jake says, Hannah, what do you think I'm mad about? And Hanna May says, I don't care. Jake said, I waited. My bad. This is the last time this happens. When it's your week, you bring Sophie late, it's on you. I'm going to grab her. Anyway, Sophie's been upset. And so you pick up today, I pick up tomorrow, and so on and so on. Hanna May says, what about messaging people asking where I'm at? It's none of your business. You had no right turning up here to start with. And Jake said, you didn't answer your phone. I called your mom. Hanna May said, yeah, and I talked to my mom. Jake said, and she said you weren't home. She said you were somewhere else at, I think he said Chelsea's. And Jake said, did they smoke in this house? Hanna May says, no, have a nice day. And Jake says, Merry Christmas. So as Jake's walking back to the car, and it's just him and Sophia, he's still recording, he tells Sophia, you smell like smoke. And I think he said, I need you to wake up. Have you been awake for long? And Sophie says, for long now. And Jake says, I think, how long have you been awake? Jake says, it's Christmas, sweetie. And you hear Sophie say, Vine. And Jake says, he's at the house, sweetie. We're going to get him. So that ends that call. Then we jump to the 29th of December, 2015. This is 11:32 a.m. This is Jake dropping Sophia off to Hanna May. Jake says he says something about the custody thing. You can't understand it. Sophie yells, Daddy, and Jake says, I'm right here, sweetie. Hanna May says, come here, Soph. Jake says, we never spoken over Saturday. And Hanna May says, nothing. to him, and Jake says, do I get a response? Something is said. I tried for 20 minutes, y'all. Couldn't do it. Jake says, okay, what time? And Hanna May said, I think 8 in the morning or 5 in the morning. I don't know if I want to go. And Jake said something about which ain't often you go to concerts. Hanna May all of a sudden, like really in an excited voice, says, Sophie, look at this Jeep. And Jake says, yeah, nice one. Jake says, anyway, we can talk about it on Saturday. So that ends that call. Then we jump to January 6, 2016 at 6:11 p.m. Jake asks Hanna May when they can go back to the lawyer. This was Jake says, when do you think we can go to the lawyer? Now, I'm not claiming this is verbatim, y'all. This is me literally rewinding 50 times trying to decipher things. And if I get it wrong, my bad, but I'm trying to kind of get the gist of it anyway. It says, I already owe him one. I won't have to change it. Then you hear Dana. You hear her voice. She says, that's not Hanna May's, is it? And then there's something said, and Jake says, nah, your dad told me that he told you if you're okay, we need to keep it. And I think he's talking about that lawyer appointment. And Hanna May said, oh, did he? Hanna May says, you want to go bye-bye? Get in. And Sophie is crying. Jake says, let's go. Hanna May said, what's her name, Sophie? What's your sissy's name? Kylie May. And it's just so cute. You just hear like Hanna May sounds so carefree and happy. And Jake says, really? And he kind of says something to the effect of making fun of the name, something about it being Hanna May and then Kylie May, about the middle name being hers. And that ends that call. So February 6, 2016 at 4:08 p.m., Jake picks up Sophie. George, Angela, and Vine are heard in the car, and you can't make out much at all. It's chaos in that car, y'all. I'd have a breakdown that loud. Everybody's yelling. Kids, adults, everything. I think it's George says, don't say a word. And George says, we need to get out of here before Chris and little Chris and all of them start rolling up here. Let's go. All the way past Chris, and it's kind of panicked. And Angela says, stop. In the meantime, the kids are screaming, and that is kind of it for that one. This one jumps to February 27th, 2016 at 3:30. And later we'll learn at this point, they're already starting to buy products that are used to make that homemade silencers that they obviously used the night of the murders. It sounds like maybe when Jake got there, Hanna May was sleeping. Yeah, at this point, she's getting towards the end of her pregnancy. I slept like a bear the last few months of my pregnancies, and it was just a really good excuse because I had a good one. Hanna May says that she's really hungry and she has clothes at her dad's in the dryer. And Hanna May says, we don't have a washer here. And Jake says, you don't have a washer? And Jake says something about your mom said she was finding a new house. And Hanna May says, yeah, they've surveyed it. And then Jake asks, when are you guys getting it? Hanna May says it should be the 1st of the month. It was supposed to be the 1st of the year. Hanna May says, I won't be able to help move. I'm pregnant. And then Jake asked something about getting a copy of her schedule. And he said she could just send him a picture of it. She says, if my boyfriend finds out I gave you a copy of my schedule, he'll be griping. I think that's what she said. And Jake says, why? And he says very pointed, why? Hanna May says he doesn't even like that I text you. And Jake says, why? Hanna May says, I mean, he understands we have a kid together, but he doesn't like me texting you. And Jake said, he never texted me about me. He texted me about her. And I'm thinking maybe Sophie. Jake says he has a problem with me texting you as much as I do. Everything I tell you is about Sophia. And Hanna May says, yeah. Jake also, this was very curious to me. Jake also asked if Hanna May has her mom's schedule too. And Jake says, when you see her, tell her to give me one. You guys both work tomorrow or the day after? Hanna May says she works tonight, and then she names off Sunday through Wednesday. And Jake asked, does your mom work Monday, Tuesday? So Hanna May says, you can have the 23rd because I'm going to an AC/DC concert. Jake says, since when do you like AC/DC? Hanna May says, I've heard some of their music, Back in Black, Highway to Hell. Jake says, do you understand the concept of that song? I hope you don't sing along. Hanna May says, oh, I don't. I just don't. I just like the sound of it. And Jake says, okay, in a very high-pitched voice. Okay, so he's worried about her singing along to Highway to Hell. In the meantime, he's plotting the murders of 8 human beings. If anybody's on a highway to hell, it was him. Jake said, if she gets the sniffles or a cough, give her Benadryl. Text me when she gets up before you leave so I can come get her. They talk about Tabitha. It was really, really muffled, but I think Hanna May was reading some private messages between her and Tabitha to Jake. Jake did say that they had asked Tabitha if she was still living with the man who molested her. I remember her mom's boyfriend or husband did, and her mom didn't report it to authorities. And Jake said she told them she was not. They talk about taxes, I believe, and Jake talks about getting $2,000 back or something. So that ends that call. The next recording, March 18th, 2016. We're a month and a few days away from those murders. 427. This is so eerie, y'all. Just knowing what's going to happen in this house and hearing how excited Dana was to have this new place. Jake's getting a tour. And all you know he's doing is scoping it out. He comes back later to put together the crib for Kylie May. And I fully believe that was not out of the goodness of his heart, but to get a little more familiar with where the furniture is going to be settled at that point. So Dana, we hear Dana, and she said, are you going to show your dad the house? And she's very excited. Sophie says, yeah. And Dana says, show him. And then Dana says, here's Christopher's room. And Jake says, there's nothing in here. Dana says, well, no. And I think she says he doesn't have a key. That's what I think she says. Jake says, tell Sophie to show him her room. Or Jake tells Sophie, show me your room. Is this your room? Dana says, no, it's back here. This is Hannah's room. Your room is right there. It sounds like Jake leaves with Sophia, and she says she wants her Amity, which is Amity Mommy, which is Angela, because they call her Amity. And then Sophie, really cute voice, says bye. But it's so crazy to hear, because again, we haven't heard Dana. I've never heard Dana's voice. I've never heard Hanna May's voice. I've never heard little Chris's voice. There was one recording where he just kind of gets loud and says something that, it was just very off the wall and it sounded funny. I don't know what he said, but you could tell he was probably a little character. So here we go. March 31st, 2016. We're less than a month away from the murders, y'all. 4:02 p.m. Jake picks up Sophie and George is heard in the car. George says, oh, Sophia, why are you so filthy? And he says this in a really condescending, mean voice. George said, do they not know how to give you a bath? And Sophia says, yeah. Put clothes on you is what George says. That's the end of that. So then we jump to April the 9th, 2016, 10:55 a.m. There's a discussion of Hanna May's pregnancy and due date. There's a radio playing, Sophia in the background. You couldn't hear a word of that conversation. And that pretty much ends the playing of the audio that Jake recorded. So on Cross after lunch, Julia's back on the stand. There's 10 different videos. Okay, this is Parker. 10 different videos Jake secretly recorded. Do you know how many videos you reviewed that he made in total? She said some had no content that was relevant, and there were a number of them, but he says these 10 were relevant. And she said her and the investigators decided which ones were relevant to be played. He asked if she knew the total time of the videos they played today, and she said not specifically. She did prepare all the transcripts herself. So on redirect, Angela, the prosecutor, says after the March 18th date at the new house, the recordings were at the new house from that point on. And she said yes. I don't know really. Okay, so it gives context, I think, into the deception of the custody battle and kind of the overall linger of the dates getting closer to the murders. But there were only 2 that were really relevant to George. And again, it's something I've said consistently is that yesterday we saw this really freak out side of George where he's being super mean to his kid. Just essentially putting the fear of strangers in his kid, which is not a bad thing, but they go a step further. And if you remember, Angela took those kids to the hospital after they left that border, although Julia testified that recording was actually like 4 days after They were stopped at the border. So now we move into purchases that investigators focused on once they started getting all these bank statements, PayPal statements, Amazon, all the things, credit card purchases, retail purchases. They also reviewed emails that the Wagners had to see about receipts. So she made a timeline of the purchases. So just to give you a really quick summary, that pretty much all this stuff relates to homemade suppressors with the exception of a few things. But February 26th, Tactical Innovations, Jake purchased a Colt Umarex 1911 22 long rifle thread adapter and protector for $28.79. That is something used for homemade silencer. February 29th, O'Reilly Auto Parts in West Union. There was it says 10 Dorman freeze plugs. I think I might have typoed, y'all, for $9.70. The freeze plugs I Googled, they can go down into those mag flashlights to be a part of that homemade suppressor. Normally, they're used in really cold environments to protect your car. Jake's rewards number was used, and investigators got a printout of that receipt. If you're on YouTube, it's not super legible and it wasn't on screen, but it's there. February 29th, there was an Amazon purchase. Jake used his email, which is Chevy 1971 diesel at hotmail.com. Believe me, y'all, I'm going on the Wayback Machine and I'm using these email addresses to find past activity online before all this hit the fan. I've already found a few things from the General Wagner Hotmail, some dogs for sale and things like that. And then some pictures of Defiance Farms. I love sleuthing, y'all. All right. So on that Amazon purchase, he bought an extra long length drill bit for $27.88. Same day, same email. He brought 2 Great Light 3D high intensity aluminum flashlights, one for $24.37 and one for $27.26. So we're jumping to March. And so on March the 1st, he bought a on the 1st, a North Bay Cutting Tools website, or from North Bay Cutting Tools. He bought 28CX hex die, and that's $11.99. That was shipped to Jake, paid via PayPal. On the 1st as well, Napa Trading Company on eBay, same email, a 1/2x28 high quality trap plug for $14.73 and paid through PayPal. March the 2nd, drillandcutters.com. Jake used his email, shipped to Jake, extra long drill bit. That was for $37.96. On March the 2nd, Amazon solvent trap. Jake paid $44.48. On the 3rd, that's when the family bought that Walmart home surveillance system for nearly $300. They bought the protection plan that had the DVR and the cameras, if you remember. On the 16th, Brick House Security Bug Detector. So Angela bought that for $244.94 using George's Cabela's Club card with the email WR4RRP@hotmail.com. That was an email that she said all the Wagners seemed to use at one point. On March the 16th, a signal jammer. Now, there was a laptop screenshot located of a 4G portable 6-band signal jammer pro. It was left in the cart for $549. So on the 16th and the 17th of March, there were some calls to that signal jammer customer service number by Angela's phone. And those calls on the 16th, it was at 9:10 p.m. Then on the 17th at 3:59 and 4 o'clock. The next morning, there were calls between George's phone from Cabela's Club fraud department. There was an incoming on the 17th at 8:03 a.m., an outgoing on 8:32, and an outgoing call to the fraud department on 9:38. So my guess is that maybe what happened is you make a large purchase, it gets flagged as fraud. I've had that happen before. They deny the purchase, they call you, you call back, say it's all good, they push it through. So that's kind of my guess on why that was left in the cart, and they had that screenshot. So we go to March 17th, Amazon. Jake uses his email a tap and die set, also for homemade suppressors. All this stuff is for homemade suppressors, with the exception of the surveillance and the signal jammer, as far as I know, and the bug detector. So there's on the 21st of March, HX Trading Company, they used George's Cabela's Visa for $630.59. This comes in later when on cross, but remember those numbers, and remember on the 16th, she tries to buy the signal jammer for $549. Fraud calls George the next day. There's 2 calls made back to the fraud department, and then on the 21st, there's a charge for $630.59. So you do the math. All right, so now we are jumping to April. April 3rd, Bass Pro Shops. Jake used his Pro Shops rewards card. He got a Caldwell AR-15 brass catcher and 2 bait nets. April 7th, the infamous Walmart shoes purchased by Angela. April 9th, on eBay, the Wagner email was used. That's W4RRP@hotmail.com. This was for a Captain America 2 Winter Soldier Bucky Barnes cosplay latex mask, which is terrifying and which makes me think maybe this is something that was used the night of the murders, because it covers your face. They've got dark hair. If it's dark in the houses, there's not much to see. So on cross, Parker talks about the March 16th purchase by Angela Wagner and purchased with George's card. It was shipped to Angela. He makes that clear. That's the signal jammer with George's card, or so they assume. She's asking for times these were done, or if they were he's asking for the times these purchases were made, or if they were close in time. And she said it was the same day, so she would consider that close. So he asked about the calls to signal jammer customer service from Angela's phone, and he asked about the call to the fraud department the next morning, as we know, from George's phone. So on March 21st, he talks about George's Cabela's Visa. No item was listed. They couldn't find an item for that $630.59 purchase. And she said she can't say if that purchase is associated with the case. But remember, it triggered the fraud from what I can gather. And then they pushed it through. So on redirect, they included the high dollar transaction. Angela wanted to make sure to get her theory out there. The signal jammer was $549, not including shipping. So they thought it was close in amounts and time frame, which is less than 4 days from that screenshot of it in the cart being taken and the transaction posting. So on cross, you don't have a receipt. You don't know what that item is. And she says no. Angela gets back up. It's like, boom, boom, you're up. I'm up. You're up. They tried to find the item and serve the company with legal papers. However, it's a Chinese company and they did not respond to the subpoena. So you do the math. This is where the jury's common sense can kick in. Yeah. The defense can say you don't know what that purchase is. And, the defense maybe, or the jurors will do 2 and 2. Okay. So the last witness of the day was Michael Kaiser. He's a BCI supervisor of forensic accounting. And bless this man, because numbers give me stress, but he's good at it. He was asked to get involved shortly after the murders in July or August, really soon after. There was no clear direction for him to go, but he started going to meetings to absorb information. Remember around this time, a couple of months after the murders, the rumors around town was this was a drug cartel hit. They didn't know what they were looking for. The Wagners, weren't even really on their radar at this point. But as the case progressed, he started looking into the Wagner's finances. And he grouped them together because they had common ownership and their finances were grouped together. He looked at them as individuals in the accounts as well as any corporate entities. They also included Wagner Trucking, Defiance Farms, and Tabitha Wagner. Now, he didn't finish today and they ended the day with him. The prosecution said they still had a long way to go with him. So they pull up a graphic of the bank accounts, and the They had a lot, y'all. So he sent subpoenas to each bank, and there were a lot with the Alaska Credit Union. The credit union can have both checking and savings, and he explains that if you look at the account numbers, like the last two digits are different with like a dash, so you know that's a checking and a savings account under one account. Angela had both, and Jake and Angela co-owned a savings, checking, and a money market account, but it was closed on December 26, 2017. He looked for any signs of guns, ammunition, mag lights, fuel filters, everything that the investigators kind of told him to keep an eye on. He readily admitted he's not a gun expert and doesn't know much. So they kind of were telling him, this is what you look for. So PNC, there was a joint account of Billy and Angela's. He looks at purchases, trends, patterns. Did the income or expenditures change over time? This account was mainly used for normal things, insurance, restaurants, Walmart, and purchases of interest in that account were none. So Jake's account, he links the transactions to the items of interest that Julia talked about. We're not going to regurgitate all that because we just did. So George's account, March 23rd, 2016, at a store, I think is it Menards? He bought 20 60-pound bags of concrete mix. So the thing about that is when Jake confessed, he said that they broke the weapons up and put them in concrete and sunk some of those into Frederica's Pond. April 11th, 2016, getting close to the murders, George's account, PayPal, $35 for what? Captain America mask. I think he's also heard on the wiretaps talking about this mask at some point. All right, so we move to the Wagner trucking account. George and Angela were the co-owners on that. He noticed multiple insurance payouts coming through this account. February 5th, 2016, there was a $40,000 insurance payout from Great Western Insurance. The note on the check said settlement payable to George. February 8th, 2016, there were three checks from the same insurance company to George. They were for personal property in the amount of $2,500, a settlement for $1,675.99, and there was a reimbursement for $300. March 4th, 2016, same insurance company paid out to George $864.52. February 18th, 2006, there was a purchase at O'Reilly Auto Parts for an oil filter. That's $28.95. That is used to make homemade silencers. Allegedly. January 25th, 2017, legal fees, $50 to Bruce Daly. I believe Bruce Daly may have been Jake's attorney. I'm not sure. So these Alaska federal accounts, he looked at money coming in, going out. There were transfers between the family. He said it was ping, 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 ping. Everybody was sending to everybody. So January 14th, 2014, there's an insurance payout, Ohio Casualty Insurance, to Jake and George for $9,916.70. On January 21st, 2014, deposit from Frederica and her husband, Bob, in that account, $33,000 written to George. January 31st, 2014, transfer to George and Jake's account in the amount of $25,880. February 3rd, 2014, real estate check written to Ohio Valley Bank for $174,000. I believe that's Peterson Road. So they're getting maybe money for this arson that they committed on Bethel Hill is my guess. February 5th, 2014, legal expenses from Young and Caldwell law firm to Jake and George for $46.90. This may all come in later. February 7th, 2014, legal expense to Young and Caldwell for $419. I believe this is when Tabitha and George were going through their divorce. February 19th, 14, insurance payout from Ohio Casualty to Jake and George for $8,690. Another payout on April the 9th, 2014, $15,461.53. August 18th, 2014, another payout, $18,000, $706.57. And then August the 28th, there was a cash withdrawal for $18,700, which is pretty much what was put in 10 days earlier. Then lastly, from where we got today, we are at October 7th, 2014, insurance payout, $13,861.20. I want to know how the heck these people got insurance and how did they not get investigated? That's my thing. They had 11 loans and credit cards accounts. And so they started getting into those. A juror asked for a break. It was getting to be close to 5. That's when the prosecution says we're not done with him, nowhere near done. And they broke for the day. So I think what today did is show certain things. You definitely had Jake doing most of the purchases. You had Angela buying 2 things that were really super incriminating that Jake admitted they used the night of the murders to be undetected. But then you have George buying the mask. Now, I'm sure his lawyer is going to say maybe he just liked to put on a mask and run around the house, because Jake likes My Little Pony, whatever. But come on, y'all. You buy that shortly before the murders and something smells rotten. So tomorrow we're back with the financial dude in the morning. And I'm hoping we don't have, my ears need a break, y'all. Cause when I'm doing this, I have my AirPods squeezed into my ears. And then finally halfway through today, I realized what I do is I get my good mic, put it up to the speaker on the iMac, and then I put it into my GarageBand and clean up the audio, and that helped a little bit. Also, a lot of people have been saying when they're using their headphones trying to listen to this on YouTube, they only get it in one ear. I thought my AirPods were on the blink, but give you a little hint. If you go into your accessibility options on your computer, go to audio, uncheck play stereo and audio as mono, and you will get it in both ears, which wish I'd have known that yesterday, but I didn't. All right, guys, I'm out. We'll see you tomorrow for another rundown of what happens in the Wagner trial. We're nowhere near done, y'all. We might be doing this right up until it's time for me to do this for Murdaugh. A lot of you are excited about that, so awesome. And welcome to all of our new subscribers. And I really appreciate you hanging out, and we have a little fun and we keep it factual, and I hope you stick around. All right, we'll see you soon.